Hello everyone, this is MC Deck Discussions and I'm Abby Small. And today we have another deck discussion, this time with Maria Hill. So this is my first time with Maria Hill. This deck is called Super-Sonic S.H.I.E.L.D team with the British Invasion. So the goal in this deck is to get out two of the three key allies here. So those three key allies are Agent 13, Agent Coulson, Agent 13, Captain Britain, and Nick Fury. So we want at least two of those three. And once we have two of those three out, you're all set. If we get a third one, that's great. Getting Agent 13 out is usually a bonus. He can also stay out the entire game once he comes out, but a lot of times you want him to go back in your deck. And Nick Fury Sr. is meant to be just kind of help taking care of emergencies. So let's look at those three key allies, and then we'll take a look at our numerous supports in here and some key upgrades. All right, so first Agent 13, right? Forecast ally, 2 thwart, 1 attack, has his shield and spy traits, and has 4 health, has this response. Agent 13 attacks or thwarts, after Agent 13 attacks or thwarts, choose a shield support, ready that support. Especially important in a Maria Hill deck, and we'll take a look at those supports in a little bit. So Agent Coulson, like I said, is can stay out, but is really meant to bring in a couple of important cards or put them into your hand and use them as a resource. Since Agent Coulson does have 2 thwart, he's good for getting out there and thwarting, and maybe a couple of times, and then possibly defending. Once the deck is set up, you shouldn't need to defend with any of your allies, but early on in the game, he can become important for that. And he can also bring out counterintelligence to help with preventing 3 threat from going on the scheme, and then on the main scheme. And then he can also get the shield director, right? So those are, not shield director, this one, here it is, Life Model Decoy. So this is the other preparation card. This one comes actually in Maria Hill's deck, and this one can be important to get into play, especially early on in the game, or even just as a backup to keep Maria Hill defended, prevent damage from going on Maria Hill. So that's what Agent 13 is. That's what Agent Coulson is for. Captain Britain, as I mentioned, is one of the core allies here. So when he gets into play, and most games he was one of the ones that I kept in play the entire game. He was definitely a high priority. He's the only ally in here that is not a shield ally. He has Ariel and Excalibur, although he becomes a shield when he gets into play. That part doesn't really matter too much in this deck. But it is just true because that's part of Maria Hill's hero ability, which we'll go back to in a little bit. So he has an attack of 3 and a thwart of 3, but notice he has 2 consequential damage on both. However, Captain Britain takes -1 consequential damage after he thwarts a side scheme or attacks a minion. That's his big job in this deck. But you will find that you'll have other opportunities despite the 2 consequential damage for the thwarting or attacking. When he goes after, say, the main scheme or goes after the villain, he will have opportunities to do that here and there, despite the extra damage, and you'll see why in a little bit. All right. So, and then that leaves Nick Fury, right, who is the identity-specific ally in this deck. He has this he has 2 attack and 2 thwart. He has a cost of 4, 3 health. So these are, relatively expensive allies in this deck, except for Agent 13. That's the only 3-cost ally. The others are all 4-cost. But we have some good resources in here and other ways to help add resources. So we end up being good with regard to that in this deck. Plus, it's a low ally deck, right? It only has 5 allies, so I only added 4 allies to this deck, which if you've been following my deck builds for a while, you'll know that that's rare for me. I usually have quite a few more, at least like 8 allies most of the time. So this is a low ally count for one of my decks. So, but one of the important things about Nick Fury is he has this response after Nick Fury uses a basic power, place 1 all-purpose counter on a shield support. All right, so first let's get to Maria Hill's abilities real quickly. Then we'll get into some of the other cards, right? So Maria Hill So she, first of all, she has 9 hit points and a hand size of 5 on her hero side, has 2 thwart, 1 attack, and 2 defense. And she has each ally you control gains the shield trait. So that's what I mentioned a little bit ago. But like I said, that doesn't really matter too much in this deck. And she has this ability, reassignment. Is this action, move 1 all-purpose counter from a shield support to another shield support. That is definitely critical in this deck. We have lots of opportunity to do that with the shield supports that are put into this deck. And then on her alter ego side, she has 3 recovery and a hand size of 6. And then she has this, deck setup, deck building ability, right? You may include the maximum number of copies of 3 shield supports in your deck from aspects other than your chosen aspect. And this is a justice deck. So you'll notice that we have, for our 3, we have 1 from aggression, 1 from, protection, and then the 3 copies of med team, also from protection. And so those are included in this deck. And then she has this action, exhaust Maria Hill, search your deck for a shield support and add it to your hand. So she has numerous choices for that here. So let's get into what's going to keep these allies in play once they get into play. So we have 3 copies of Field Agent and 3 copies of Med Team. So Field Agent has this hero interrupt. First of all, it only costs 1, and it has 3 uses, so 3 backup counters. So this is one of the key cards because it's so cheap and because it has 3 counters. It's very easy to use Maria Hill's reassignment ability for this card. And also, when this card comes into play, you can use its hero interrupt when a shield ally would take any amount of consequential damage, exhaust Field Agent, and remove 1 backup counter from it, prevent 1 of that damage. Oh, which means, I don't know why I said earlier that it doesn't matter about Captain Britain becoming a shield agent. This is why it does matter, right? That he ends up with each ally you control gains the shield trait. So that does matter for a field agent. Right. I can't believe I forgot that. I used this card a lot for Captain Britain. So that's a way you can prevent 1 of that damage from occurring. And then in addition, with the 3 med teams in here, again, with 3 counters, so sometimes you'll use these counters to shift around as well using Maria Hill's hero ability. And but you can remove 1 medical counter from it and heal 2 damage from a friendly character. So those also will help to keep Agent Coulson, Agent 13, Captain Britain, and Nick Fury in play, and also help out with Maria Hill's health because she is a little squishy with her 9 hit points. So it'll sometimes be used for that. And I had there were plenty of times when I would have multiple of those in play. Okay. All right. We also have in here a couple of cards that act kind of like resource generators, even though they're not, but they at least make it so that you have a reduced cost of playing cards. And so Government Liaison, so a 2-cost Persona and Shield card as support, right? Has the hero action, exhaust Government Liaison, play a shield card from your hand, reducing its resource cost by 1. So that's very beneficial, and you will have already wanted to use Helicarrier before that, right? Exhaust Helicarrier, choose a player, reduce the resource cost of the next card that player plays this phase by 1, right? So you would do Helicarrier to help with help as well. So typically I would actually get Government Liaison in play first, and then later on, usually Helicarrier, but Build Support could help get either of those into play. But if they're already in play, they can also help get into play, say, Med Team, right? Because for our player side scheme can help get in to play any support that has a cost of 3 or less. Okay. All right. We also have in here Sky Destroyer. So that gives us some extra damage that's just, going off here and there throughout the game. So it has this response after you play a shield card, exhaust Sky Destroyer, deal 2 damage to an enemy. Not a high priority early in the game. Usually, it might be on the second pass that I get this into play, but once it gets into play, getting that regular 2 damage ends up being very useful. Of course, if you can get it into play earlier, that's also nice. And then you get our 2 big ones. Of course, the Iliad is already the big support, the shield vehicle that's included in her deck. that has lots of options for dealing damage, removing threat, and healing Maria Hill. So another help with healing Maria Hill when it's necessary. Though we're hoping not to use that. We're hoping to use Med Team for that. But here and there, I definitely use the Iliad too. Use what resources are available at the time. But we also have the Bellerophon, huge card in this deck, especially if we look at our villains here. We had Claw, Eunice, Ensab, and Nur, which is the version of Apocalypse that changes forms. So it's the basically the final villain in the Age of Apocalypse expansion, and Magneto. So Magneto, of course, ends up with a ton of those cards on him. So the Bellerophon being able to get rid of any tough status card ahead of time is really nice for Magneto especially, but it applies to some of the other villains as well in this case. And then we also have the Pericles, and the Pericles is very often essential at the beginning of a game, right? With only having 5 allies in play, we need a way to protect Maria Hill. Of course, it depends on the villain. Like when I was facing Magneto, you know that with Magneto, you're always in danger of losing the very first round. So the Pericles was very often necessary to make sure that things are delayed in regard to that, get it into play right away, get a tough on Maria Hill, and so that she can be protected, and then start building out from there. But hopefully, you don't have to rely on the Pericles and start getting some of these other cards in play. I did find with the other villains, generally, I didn't have to get the Pericles in play and could start off trying to get some of these other cards in play instead. In fact, a lot of times, Leo Fitz would be a first target, right? So because you reduce the cost to play Leo Fitz by 2 if your identity has the shield trait. So if I get Leo Fitz into play now for a cost of 1, he has this alter ego action, exhaust Leo Fitz, search the deck for a tech card and add it to your hand. So with that, since we've covered all the supports, and now that we're mentioned Leo Fitz, let's move over to the upgrades, right? So we have a few upgrades in here, 4 of them altogether, actually. So first of all, there's the life model decoy that comes in Maria Hill's kit. So as a preparation and a tech card. So that gives you an option as a target for Leo Fitz. But also we have 3 of these sonic rifles, right? So sonic rifles. So even though we already have the Pericles in here that could possibly stun or confuse the villain, we also have 3 sonic rifles. So that can also help out with confusing the villain, or even doing damage. So sometimes you can have 1 or 2 of these out. The villain is already confused, and if that's the case, you could end up dealing 3 damage to that villain or any other enemy for that matter. So those 4 cards mean that Leo Fitz, even though it's not a lot of tech supports, it means that Leo Fitz can actually be used as a resource. So getting him out early in the game and then being able to grab some of these extra cards means you have some extra resources a lot of times early in the game to help you play your other cards and get things set up, including helping to play some of these other allies, especially the 4-cost allies, but even Agent 13 to help get these built out. All right. So that's the gist of the cards. We also have Super Spies in here. Works really well because we expect to have Nick Fury out the entire game, right? So Super Spies is a 0-cost event, but it's the team up card, and it has this hero action, place a total of 3 all-purpose counters and our threat tokens. In this case, it'll be all-purpose counters on shield supports and our suit form upgrade. So in this case, again, it's the shield supports. So it gets a chance to get 3 of those out there, which is really nice for building up these big ones quickly and getting this deck built out. All right, so let's mention a few other things as far as playing the deck is concerned. So one of the things is with some of her own cards, right? So with having so many of these supports in play, All Points Bulletin becomes, right, there are 2 copies of this that come in her deck. This is a great end game burst of damage. Of course, you can also use it to remove a bunch of threat as well, but it only costs 2. And for each shield support you control, remove 1 threat from a scheme or deal 1 damage to an enemy. So you can, so you choose, and that's for each shield support, you choose one or the other of those. So you could use it for both things. Typically for me, I would use it near the end of the game to do a bunch of damage to a villain, or maybe a big minion to set up finishing off the villain. And then I also wanted to mention that when I use on the double, it would typically be for one of these, for one of the 6-cost cards. But when I use reinforcements, which is a 1-cost event, choose any number of shield supports with a combined printed cost of 6 or less. Place one all-purpose counter on each of those supports. So hopefully when I play that card, I actually have a lot of these lower cost cards so that I can get 2 or maybe 3, possibly even 4 of these reinforcements out, and then they become great fuel for Maria Hill's reassignment ability to be able to shift them around to the bigger cost cards. So that's where those reinforcements are typically used. All right. So other than that, your real goal is to keep Maria Hill protected in the beginning, start to build things out. Get your key allies, at least 2 of the 3 key allies in play, so that they're constantly helping to keep everything in check, your villains, minions, and side schemes, and the scheme in check. And then also getting these big supports out. So once you have, a number of your big supports out and your key allies out, then you're ready to just, you have the ability to control everything and can finish off the villain basically at will, right? You just do, chunks of damage until you have the villain finished off. So that's it for this deck. Oh, real quick explanation about the title, I guess, to finish off. Super-Sonic S.H.I.E.L.D team with the British invasion. So Captain Britain represents that British invasion. Like I said, just awesome card in this deck. And then the Super-Sonic, right? So we have Super Spies, right? So that's the super. And then we have our Sonic Rifles, 3 copies of the Sonic Rifles in here. So there's, and of course, this is a S.H.I.E.L.D team in a big way, both in terms of the allies and the supports. If you look at the names here, you can see why it's a real team, a real S.H.I.E.L.D team in here. Okay, so that finishes things off. All right, I hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to make comments too if you wish to. I love having conversations with people in the comment section. Have a good one, everybody.